The following program contains graphic material, including offensive language. Viewers.
I want to be clear here that since then, in February of 2021, Mark Meadows said on Fox News that, quote, even in January, that was a given. As many as 10,000 National Guard troops were told to be on the ready by the Secretary of Defense. Is there any accuracy to that statement?
I'm not from my perspective. I was never given any direction or order or knew of any plans of that nature. So I was surprised by seeing that publicly, but I don't know the context or even where it was. So, no, there was no. We obviously had plans for activating more folks, but that was not anything more than contingency planning. There was no official message traffic or anything of that nature regarding.
So just so we're clear, you did not have 10,000 troops, quote, to be on the ready prior to January 6th.
A non-military person probably could have some sort of weird interpretation, but no, to answer your question, no, that was not part of my plan or the Department of Defense's plan.
And just that the rest of his statement was, quote, that was a direct order from President Trump, and yet here is what we see, all kinds of blame going around, but not a whole lot of accountability. And to be crystal clear, there was no direct order from President Trump to put 10,000 troops to be on the ready for January 6th, correct?
No. Yeah, that's correct. There was no order from the president.
That was Trump's Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller testifying for the January 6th committee under oath that there was no direct order from President Trump to put 10,000 troops at the ready for January 6th. And why did the January 6th committee decide to release this particular piece of information? Because Republicans, in their desperation to obfuscate the facts and continue to try and blame that day on anyone but Trump, have decided that somehow Trump did order thousands of troops to the Capitol and that request was also somehow blocked by Nancy Pelosi. In fact, they're so committed to this bit that here's what Miller said not under oath while on Fox News.
Then we pivoted to setting up for January 6th, and Mr. Trump unequivocally authorized up to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women for us to utilize should the second part of the law, the requests, come in. But those requests never did, as you highlighted.
Let me be very clear. Both of you said this under oath, under the threat of a penalty of perjury to the committee?
Oh, absolutely, Sean. And to be clear, Cash brought it up best. The meeting was one of the serious kind of heavy meetings I've been in, and it was about a foreign threat that was directed towards the United States, which obviously we can't talk to for fear of ended up in jail. And so I kind of want to be clear. The president, as we're leaving, it says, hey, one more thing, and we all sat back down and we discussed what was going on January 6th. I don't want to, because I think that's important to bring up so that the opposition doesn't get this idea that this was the purpose of the meeting. The president was doing exactly what I expect the commander-in-chief to do, any commander-in-chief to do. He was looking at the broad threats against the United States, and he brought this up as on his own.
Just so we're clear, Miller told Hannity on air that he did testify under oath that Trump authorized tens of thousands of National Guard troops, and yet in the actual recorded deposition released by the January 6th committee, Miller said, quote, there was no order from the president. Tell you what, you'd be hard-pressed to find people who are more contemptuous of their own supporters than Republicans. In reality, Donald Trump made the conscious decision on January 6th not to call any law enforcement agencies. Here's proof from the latest January 6th committee hearing of exactly that.
So are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Defense that day?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Attorney General of the United States that day?
No.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Homeland Security that day?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Did you ever hear the president
No.
ask for the National Guard? Did you ever hear the president ask for law enforcement response?
No.
We know from the employee that TV was tuned to Fox News all afternoon. Here you can see Fox News on the TV showing coverage of the joint session that was airing that day at 1:25. Other witnesses confirmed that President Trump was in the dining room with the TV on for more than 2.5 hours.
And why did Trump refuse to call anyone? Because January 6th was quite literally what he wanted. The insurrection wasn't a bug, it was a feature. It was the direct result of a months-long effort peppering his supporters with the big lie that the election was stolen. These people were there because they'd been brainwashed by Trump himself that he was the victim of some grand scheme to deprive him of an election win, when in reality, he was just a loser. But that didn't stop him from manipulating those people into showing up to do his political bidding anyway. He knew that if he can send them off to the Capitol to try and pressure Mike Pence into unilaterally blocking certification of the election, which Pence had zero power to actually do, then he had his best shot at illegally retaining the presidency. And so why would he call them off when they were doing exactly what he needed them to do? He wouldn't. Again, the events of January 6th weren't an accident, they were the result of a carefully orchestrated scheme to get a bunch of brainwashed marks to do Trump's political bidding. And that's the important point to remember, because these Republicans like Sean Hannity, like Christopher Miller, like Donald Trump himself, would love nothing more than to pretend that the real issue here is the security failures at the Capitol, and not what the security failures were in response to. And that's not to say that the security failures were acceptable, because they're not, but I'm a hell of a lot less concerned about the fact that security was ill-prepared, and a lot more concerned for what they were ill-prepared for. If you're suggesting that the real issue in all of this is the response to the coup attempt and not the actual coup attempt, then congratulations, you're helping the guys who sought the coup attempt. Consider too, despite the fact that Christopher Miller and most likely Sean Hannity know that they're peddling lies to their own audience, the fact is that they know full well that if and when their position is ultimately proven false, as was the case with the January 6th committee releasing the actual deposition audio, the fact check or the correction won't actually ever reach their supporters. It's not like Hannity is going to issue a correction. It's not like any right-wing outlet or blog or podcast is going to call out that abject hypocrisy by Christopher Miller. The point isn't actually the truth. The point is feeding the narrative. It's convincing as many people as is humanly possible that Trump was the hero in January 6th through whatever means necessary, even by concocting a fairy tale that he did the exact opposite of what he actually did. The goal here is simply to manipulate their viewers by any means necessary. So beware of propagandists like these former Trump administration officials and Fox hosts who are employing the exact same disinformation efforts now as the ones that led to the insurrection in the first place. These people who continue to lie to their supporters are doing so despite knowing the abject danger posed by peddling this disinformation to people. The fact that they can see an event like January 6th, caused solely by disinformation, and follow that by spewing yet more disinformation, goes to show that January 6th wasn't an accident for these people, it was a blueprint. And they'll continue to employ that exact same strategy in hopes that next time, with the right people in charge and having purged their airwaves of anyone with integrity, they'll be able to succeed where they've once failed. So pay attention to this space, because the threats facing our democracy are only getting
Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Very hot last few days, and I'll tell you, we had some rain and some big thunderstorms in the state. Not around here, of course, but you know, we've had them. And here's the thing. We didn't lose the power. Amazingly enough, we didn't lose the power, which usually happens a lot whenever we get like a severe storm of any kind around here. The power goes out. But, you know, it's not like it goes out and stays out for a long period of time. They get it back, but usually that's what happens. And so far, the power has been steady. So my guess is, after all the trees that the power companies have cut down along the power line, you know, the roads where the power lines are, all the trees they cut down has probably helped to keep more lines from being snapped off the poles and, having them go out there and do it. And I know a lot of people really are pissed about that because they've had to cut trees down that are on people's property so that way their branches weren't hanging over the power lines, which is a common sight around here because there's so many trees in the state. But a lot of trees in people's yards had to be trimmed or even cut down because of it. So they've been doing that steady for the last, 6-7 years, I guess. So I think there's improvement out there. But the problem with cutting down all these trees is that it makes the winds stronger because there's less trees for the to catch the wind, as it were. And so we have a problem where the winds are really strong, and because they're strong, the winds themselves could possibly knock down a pole or two, depending on where you are. And so, you can't win for losing, I guess. So we'll see. Anyway, Matt Gaetz, okay, he's under investigation for possible sex trafficking. And this guy here was out a few days ago at a giving a rally or some damn thing. I don't know what the hell it was. Was it a conservative speech summit or something like that? And he something he said in it was very misogynistic. And Huffington Post here has an article about that, and it's written by Mary Pappenfuss, entitled "Matt Gaetz: Women Who Look Like a Thumb Shouldn't Gripe About Abortion Rights." The U.S. congressman is being blasted for his overtly misogynistic speech at a conservative student summit. Unattractive women who, quote, look like a thumb, unquote, shouldn't complain about losing abortion rights because they're the, quote unquote, least likely to get pregnant, said Matt Gaetz in a jaw-dropping speech to college students at a conservative conference in Florida on Saturday. Quote, have you watched these pro-abortion, pro-murder rallies, unquote? Gaetz asked the crowd at the Turning Point USA Student Action Summit in Tampa. Quote, the people are just disgusting. Why is it that the women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having an abortion, unquote? Video of the speech was received at least 1 million views on Twitter. Quote, nobody wants to impregnate you if you look like a thumb. These people are odious from the inside out, unquote. The congressman continued, quote, they're like 5'2", 350 pounds, and they're like, give me my abortions or I'll get up and march and protest, unquote. Quote, a few of them need to get up and march. They need to get up and march for like an hour a day, swing those arms, get the blood pumping, maybe mix in a salad, unquote. Quote, why is it that women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant, okay, so critics were stunned. Jezebel ripped the comments as cartoonishly misogynistic. Texas Democrat State Representative Texas Democratic State Representative Aaron Zwiner was one of many to lambaste the congressman on Twitter. Quote, Gaetz, we don't care if you think we're hot. Either way, we deserve to make our own decisions about our futures, unquote. So many men who are determined to take choices away from women see us exactly this way, as decorations, who only have value if they are attracted to us. Gaetz, we don't care if you think we're hot. Either way, we deserve to make our own decisions about our futures. Matt Gaetz believes that a person's physical attractiveness should be proportional to their level of human rights. So a lot of comments here in retaliation to what he said, not surprisingly. And at the same time, this guy's being investigated for sex trafficking. So that tells you all you need to know about where this guy's coming from, right? You know, he's a piece of shit, okay? And chances are he's probably never going to be able to run for any office again. And I don't think that would upset many people. Okay, this guy, what kind of a moron gets up in front of people, okay, and says something like that, and doesn't even show a bit of fucking remorse or hesitation or embarrassment by saying what he said. He stands up there like he's talking to people at a country club or something, making jokes with a bunch of other guys. That's what he thinks about people. Okay, he doesn't care, if he's hurting anybody's feelings, because women's feelings don't matter to this fuck. Okay, they just don't. So the guy, he's a fucking asshole who was obviously raised by somebody who lived in a different time and had his brain filled with lies about women. Okay, and this is the way he's going to go about living his life. You see, just because it's the 21st century doesn't mean old ideals are long gone. There's still enough for these people living around today who were raised by these assholes who think about women that way. Okay, so the residual of those years of men treating women badly is still hitting us. They're still causing ripples in the water, okay? And that's not going to go away quick. Okay, it just isn't. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, we have to keep swinging the punches and beating this down, because otherwise it's never going to quit. It just isn't going to quit. So people like Matt Gaetz, they have to be sidelined or taken out of the game by any means necessary to shut them up. Okay, and I feel like there's no way to do that except to expose these imbeciles in the spotlight the way he just did on the stage, because for some reason they can't control themselves. They can't wait but to utter some misogynistic thing, expecting a laugh from the audience. And when you laugh at somebody making statements like that, you're only encouraging them to continue doing that and offending more people. So it's better when you hear somebody say something like that to just boo them, throw oranges and bananas at them on stage, scream at them, tell them to shut up. That's what you do with somebody like that. You don't sit there and you try to applaud or try to cover his ass for him. No, you rip the pants off of him so that way his ass is hanging out there in front of everybody. Okay, so in another article here, from the New York Times, OAN, One America News, okay, the acronym for that. They're in trouble because they lost a big promoter, a Trump promoter, and they're looking at, I don't know, they call it a death blow. OAN, if you don't know, is a Republican news outfit like Fox News that hasn't been on the air very long, but Verizon just dropped that network at the end of this week, and so their cable TV audience is going to shrink a lot from that. It's not like they had much of an audience to begin with, but in this article here, it talks about this thing. It says, and it's written by Jeremy Peters and Benjamin Mullen, published yesterday. The future of One America News, which established itself as a powerful voice in conservative media by promoting some of the most outlandish falsehoods about the 2020 election, is in serious doubt as major carriers drop it from their lineups and defamation lawsuits threaten to drain its finances. By the end of this week, the cable network will have lost its presence in some 20 million homes this year. The most recent blow came from Verizon, which will stop carrying OAN on its Fios television service starting Saturday. That will starve the network of a major stream of revenue. The fees it collects from Verizon, which counts roughly 3.5 million cable subscribers. In April, OAN was dropped by AT&T's DirecTV, which has about 15 million subscribers. OAN's remaining audience will be small. The network will soon be available only to a few 100,000 people who subscribe to smaller cable providers such as Frontier and GCI Liberty, said Scott Robson, a senior research analyst at S&P Global Market Intelligence. OAN also sells its programming directly to users through its OAN Live and cloud TV streaming platforms, but those products most likely provide a fraction of the revenue generated by traditional TV providers. Quote, "I really think this is the death blow for the network," unquote, Mr. Robson said. In its statement announcing the termination of its OAN deal, Verizon said only that it had been unable to reach an agreement to continue carrying One American News, and made no mention of the public pressure campaigns it faced from activists like Media Matters, which had been calling on cable providers to drop the network. A company spokeswoman declined to comment further on Tuesday. DirecTV also did not elaborate on its reasons for dropping OAN, saying in January that the move was part of a routine internal review. On Tuesday, the company referred to the January statement. While OAN doesn't have the influence wielded by the much larger Fox News, the top-rated cable news network, the fees from its deals with Verizon and AT&T provided a substantial stream of income, about $36 million a year by some estimates. And once it is gone from millions of television sets, OAN will be in a weaker bargaining position with advertisers. Fewer potential viewers most likely mean fewer companies willing to pay as much to promote their products on the network. All this comes at a particularly bad time for OAN, which is based in San Diego. The company and the Herring family that backs it face defamation lawsuits over the network's claims that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump. That coverage featured wild stories about supposed plots to steal votes from Mr. Trump. The voting technology companies Smartmatic and Dominion are suing OAN over false claims that their machines enabled Mr. Trump's enemies to switch votes cast for him to President Biden. One employee of Dominion, Eric Coomer, is also suing the network. Mr. Coomer received death threats after OAN named him in a report as an alleged collaborator of Antifa, the far-left movement. Two election workers from Georgia sued OAN for reporting that they were part of an illegal plot to add fraudulent votes to President Biden's totals in the state, which he narrowly won. OAN settled that case in April. The cases are among a series of defamation suits against conservative media outlets and Trump allies that are pending before judges across the country. Dominion and Smartmatic are also suing Newsmax, one of OAN's competitors, and Fox News. So you see, people are just getting mad at these assholes that are pushing the narrative that Trump is going around telling people that, hey, the election was stolen, because we know that it's a friggin' lie. And defamation lawsuits are the right of the people to use in situations like this. So yes, Trump he's bringing a lot of people down with him, okay? Let's put it like that. The things that, when he was president, that rose up under his administration are coming down now, okay? And why is this happening? It's because there's still enough people in America who can't be bamboozled by a mob boss, okay? Who can't be lied to by mob boss branches, okay? Wannabes, people who support Trump. The country will not stand to be led by the nose by a mafia boss. I mean, because that's the way Trump ran this country. Like Washington, D.C. was the capital of the mafia, and he ran it that way. Okay, if you didn't agree with him, you're out. Or they'd send people after you to kill you. Okay, that's what he does. That's the kind of guy he is. Now, with that mentality in mind, let me make a side note here and say, maybe this guy's got a lot more skeletons in his closet than just when he was president of this country. But with that kind of thinking, this man must have been involved in some criminal activity that could be serious. Okay, and I'm not going to say specific, but if he thinks like this at his age now, that means he's had experience in his life where he's been able to use the stick a lot as a, businessman, if you will, and he's dealt with a lot of criminals. Okay, he's obviously had entanglements with organized crime in his career, And so that being said, he's learned some things, and I bet if you dig deep enough, that man's got some buried skeleton somewhere where his trails have been. Okay, it makes perfect sense to me. So, you know, this thing we're investigating him for now is just one piece of a very, very big pie that he's been sitting on all his life of crimes that he's committed while he's been alive. I hate to think how much he's gotten away with. You know, in the 80-something years he's been around. Or how old is he? What, 70, 80 years old? I can't remember what his fucking age is. He's been around long enough, in my opinion. But long enough here where he's left a lot of fucking tragedies behind him. And since we're on the subject of Trump and the many crimes that he's committed in his life that we know of, he gave a speech here recently on Tuesday, and it's rich, man. I'll tell you. This article is written by Robert Schroeder, entitled "Trump Calls United States a Cesspool of Crime." Says nasty policies needed in first D.C. speech since leaving office. Former President Trump on Tuesday called the United States a cesspool of crime and said a forceful response is needed to stem the violence in his first remarks in Washington since he left office. Speaking at the America First Agenda Summit, the former president said the U.S. needs an, quote, all-out effort to defeat violent crime, unquote. Jesus Christ. Quote, be tough and be nasty and be mean if we have to, unquote, he said. Quote, America first must mean safety first, unquote, Trump said. He referenced examples including an assault against Republican New York gubernatorial hopeful Lee Zeldin last week and endorsed, quote, stop and frisk, unquote, policies. The summit is a program of the America First Policy Institute, a nonprofit organization headed by Brooke Rollins, who ran the Domestic Policy Council in the Trump White House. Former National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow is vice chair of the Institute's board. Trump focused much of his Tuesday remarks on crime and public safety, two issues on which Republicans aim to paint Democrats as weak as midterm elections approach. President Joe Biden, meanwhile, last week proposed to spend $37 billion to fight crime and help communities hire more police officers. Seeking to draw a contrast between Trump allies, claims to be backers of law and order, even as many opt not to disavow the January 6th attack on U.S. Capitol. Biden on Monday said this, quote, you can't be pro-insurrection and then pro-cop. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-democracy. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-American, unquote. Republicans are attacking Democrats over crime in key states, including Pennsylvania, charging that Senate hopeful John Fetterman, the Commonwealth's lieutenant governor, is soft on the issue. Fetterman is facing Republican Mehmet Oz in one of a handful of races that will decide the control of the Senate. Trump has openly flirted with, but not declared, a 2024 presidential campaign. Doing so would subject him to campaign finance requirements. As he prepared to give Tuesday's speech, Trump was far ahead of his nearest potential Republican competitor, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, in 2024 betting markets. Former Vice President Mike Pence, also a potential contender, is far behind both Trump and DeSantis, given just 5% chance in the predicate market. Trump's likelihood of winning the GOP nomination currently stands at 44%, with DeSantis at 34%, according to predicate. That's a reversal from a bit more than a month ago when DeSantis' odds outstripped the former president's. Pence also spoke in Washington on Tuesday to the National Conservative Student Conference. He blasted, quote, big tech, big media, big government, and even big business, unquote, for advancing what he called a, quote, pernicious woke agenda, unquote, reported the New York Post. Trump in his remarks referenced the high U.S. inflation and gasoline prices, two worries for congressional Democrats seeking re-election this fall. He called the midterm elections an, quote, incredible opportunity, unquote, to, quote, vote to rescue America's future, unquote. So this, yeah, he's got a lot of balls coming out here telling people, oh, we need to we need law and order in this country, okay? We need to get people to obey and be civil. When he's done everything but. Jesus Christ. I mean, of all people, I can't believe the Republicans let this fucker come out there and say stuff like this, but I don't think they got much control over him. You know, they can't say to him, stop, because every one of these people seems to need him in their corners. They all do. So that's why you have Mike Pence, who won't denounce Trump in any speech that he gives, okay? Even though Trump actively tried to have him killed, okay, on January 6th because he wouldn't stop the certification of the election, okay? He sent that fucking mob of people after him. Remember, they had a guillotine behind them. They were going to drag him out of the damn Senate, and they were going to put him into that damn thing. You know that's what they were going to do. God only knows what would have happened, okay, if the doors hadn't been locked to the Senate chambers, if the people hadn't evacuated, okay, they certainly would have got in there and got them. Okay, those people's lives were in danger, and that was inexcusable. Okay, and Trump coming out and saying, or Trump's people coming out and saying that, oh, Trump had, what was it, 10,000 reservists on standby in case of a problem, and then find out that they lied about that when they went under oath in front of the hearing and testified that they didn't know anything that about that there was nothing said about anybody standing in wait in case of a problem, okay? So they got on Fox News and lied about that to, what's his face here? I can't remember his name, friggin' dimwit asshole. Not Laura Ingraham. Sean Hannity, that's who it was. They lied to Sean Hannity about that. Told him that, oh yeah, Trump had people in position ready to jump at a moment's notice, okay? And then they were saying how, oh, well, it was up to Pelosi to call the guards in. Not according to law. Only the president can call in the National Guard, okay? Nancy Pelosi doesn't have any authority in that, okay? Which they argued early on this year, but it was already shot down because people went and looked at the law and found out that that wasn't true. So they had to, you know, shut up about that. All right, but they still went on Sean Hannity's there this week and show and said that again, and then they turned around and said that, oh, Trump had all these people ready. Trump didn't have nothing in preparation for that. He wanted that insurrection to happen, okay? He didn't want anybody to stop it. He wanted them to go in there and go after Pence, okay? Or whoever the hell else was standing in the way of them stopping the certification of the election, okay? And not only on top of that, they got emails back and forth between these Trump idiots talking about these fake electorates they wanted to have ready to march up there to different swing states and change the outcome of the election, okay? And how stupid it was for them to call them fake electorates on the friggin' text messages, which means they knew they knew in advance these people were not the real electorates, but people they had planted to be on standby if they were called on and needed, okay? So that's a sign of conspiracy. They were conspiring to overthrow the government using fake electors, which they had written in their text messages. I mean, can you believe that there's still people today who think that they can send messages like that, and that once they're sent, that's it, they're gone, they're out of they're obliterated? Why do people think that when you send somebody messages that nobody can ever retrieve those messages? Okay, the middleman in between point A to point B is the internet, and what goes into the internet does not get deleted ever. Okay, it stays in there. As amazing as that might sound to a lot of you out there who don't know this, every time you send an email, okay, there is a copy of that going into the system, into the internet, okay? And it doesn't get deleted out of there, It just sits here. Why it sits here, I don't know. They never imagine, I guess, getting rid of old data as it sits in the system. It's just there. They have it. It's time, date, and stamped. Okay, so that way they know exactly when and where these things are at. Okay, they can backtrack a message on a cell phone to another cell phone. Okay, even if you delete it off your cell phone, that message is still there out in the system, and if the police need to recover it, they can. Why do these people not understand that? I mean, here I'm 50 years old, and even I understand that. I've been paying attention. Okay, these people in politics, their minds are so wrapped around themselves, okay, and their own power, that they don't think, about the world around them and what's possible and impossible. It changes every day, and they don't keep up with it. It's just like all them morons on January 6th recording themselves to put videos up on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram of themselves committing all the crimes that they were being charged and arrested for. It never crossed their fucking mind that they're being recorded. And that stuff is going to stay there. Even if they take it down, it's still there. It's still in the system, and a computer hacker or whoever can actually retrieve that data. It might take a little time, but they can get it. Just like all the hours of missing information that they said that, what was it, 7-8 hours of fucking data that's missing from the Trump audios and stuff like that. Okay, that was all digital. That's not deleted. Okay, that can be recovered, and I know it can be recovered. Okay, because let me tell you something. When your digital clocks, when the power goes out and the power comes back on, what do these digital clocks blink as for a time? 12 a.m., right? It just flashes 12, 12, 12, 12. It just says that. Even the old VCRs, same thing. Old radios, same thing. Why is that? It's because they've been programmed to set, okay, at an even number. My father told me this. He says that these people that program digital stuff, even up to today's modern computers, they always deal with even numbers, okay? And if let's say something's missing, okay, and then the clock, all of a sudden, when you reset it, starts to blink 12:07, that means somebody's tampered with the clock to do that. That's not normal. No factory setting is ever set like that. It's always an even number. It's never set to an odd number. So when they were saying that they were transferring from one system to another, that means they had to remove a system in order to implement a new one in its place, which means everything is reset to factory norms, which means when the data they said was missing was 7 hours of data, there's your tell right there. You can't have 7 hours of missing data. It's either going to be 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be even numbers. Okay, the odd numbers never come into play. So that right there, people, is how you could tell that was manually set to delete between whatever, it's 7 hours. Okay, that was manually deleted. Because only people deal with every other number, every odd number, every even number. Okay, only computers and things that are programmed by the factory will deal with even numbers. Okay, not the odd numbers, the even numbers. So when they said that was how many hours were missing from the recordings, that right there was a red flag right there, which means that was tampered with. Okay, and of course, even if you don't know what I'm telling you is fact, we know that that's what happened because that 7 hours, for some reason, seemed to have all the critical information we needed to hear, and all of a sudden, that's gone, okay? It's like, if somebody goes to you and says, look, I need all your homework from last week, okay, and then the guy says, oh, well, the dog ate it. Okay, obviously, that's a lie. So specific and a point in time, and now that's gone, right? Okay? So we know that's what happened. It was deliberately deleted. And it was deleted by the Secret Service. But they're out there trying to cover their ass, okay? And why the Secret Service is doing this, I don't know, especially after what they said Trump tried to do when they were driving him away from the January 6th riots where he wanted to be there. And they said, no, you can't go there. and Trump got physical with the driver and they subdued him inside the car and told him, we're not going over there, that's the end of it. Okay, basically they were telling him to shut up and we're taking you to safety whether you like it or not. Where he wanted to go into that middle of that crowd and urge them to go into the Capitol and find Mike Pence. That's what he wanted. And he went after the throat of the driver, and the guy said, you know, he blocked him like that, and the guy behind him grabbed Trump and told him to stop it, okay? So basically, the Secret Service doing that then, and now them deleting 7 hours of his conversation there, that's weird. I mean, what are they protecting him from? Or more specifically, what are they protecting themselves from that they had to delete that time? Okay. So here's a guy who's out there talking about tackling crime, getting it under control, law and order, and all this shit and that. And this guy in 4 years broke the law so many fucking ways that he really should already be in prison. There shouldn't be any discussion or hearings even wasted on telling the public what he did wrong. Okay, there's enough evidence and enough witnesses to convict this guy. Okay, why everybody thinks that this is still, you know, an up for grabs ending here, I don't know. Because in any fair law and order society, Trump would be in cuffs right now, and he would be spending his time in jail waiting for his trial. Okay, because he is guilty. All right, and there's a mountain of evidence to prove it. And any judge in the world would never let this guy go on bail because he's got the money to cut and run, and they'd never get him back, okay? So he's a flight risk, and he could still do that even now. If he feels his back is to the wall and there's no way out, he'll just split. I know he will. So like I said, this guy, he's committed all the crimes you can imagine, and here he is talking in Washington, D.C. About, you know, calling the United States a cesspool on crime. He's probably had his hand in the cesspool deeper than most. All right, let's go to commercial break. We'll be right back.
Dear CEO, what's it gonna take for you to do something? Yeah, do you even care?
Climate change affects all of us.
This is your chance to do something good.
Herschel Walker has wanted to kill a lot of people, including himself.
You were playing Russian roulette.
Yes.
With the one bullet in the gun, and you put the gun to the side of your head?
Well, I put it to the side of my head, I put it in my mouth.
He held the gun to my temple and said he was going to blow my brains out.
He talks about thinking of murdering a man who was late delivering a car. All I could think was how satisfying it would feel to squeeze the trigger, the visceral enjoyment I'd get from seeing the small entry wound and the spray of brain tissue and blood like a 4th of July firework exploding behind him.
What's Herschel Walker gonna do with a gun next? Think about that, Georgia. Think real hard.
never about voter fraud. It was never a protest. It was always about holding on to power, whatever the cost. They say in Washington the truth is hard to pin down, hard to peel back the layers, that we'd never know the details of Trump's plot to overthrow the election. But the truth is coming out, step by step, drop by drop, fact by fact. They planned it, from corrupt White House lawyers to Republican officers in Congress to the Fox newsroom. And it all comes back to him, the mastermind, the cancer in the center of it all. The man who would kill his own vice president to hold on to the White House.
And aware of the rioters' chants, the president responded with this sentiment: Mike Pence deserves it.
Because then and now, it's always been about one choice: America or Trump.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it. It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Okay, hi everybody, welcome back. So, this other article here from the New York Post, and it's talking about President Biden, and a CNN poll was made. Now, look, before I go any further, let me just say this. Polls, take them or leave them, okay? They're never 100% right, okay, and most of the time they're just dead wrong, okay. They certainly were wrong about Trump losing to Hillary. They were certainly wrong about Obama losing to Hillary, okay. They were they've been more wrong than right, and yet we still look to them to give us poll data, okay, and it's been proven more than once that their polls don't mean shit, okay. But this poll particular caught my eye because you know, it doesn't have to be right in my opinion in order to not know this already. But what it says right here is that 75% of Democrats want someone other than Joe Biden in 2024. Okay, that to me doesn't seem like a far-fetched estimate there, because Biden's numbers are lower than snake piss right now with the American public. 3/4 of self-described Democrats or Democratic-leaning voters want the party to pick someone other than President Biden as their standard bearer in 2024. And nearly 1/4 of them say they don't believe Biden can win a second term. The CNN survey released Tuesday found that 32% of Dems say they don't want Biden to be reelected. Another 24 said they didn't believe he could defeat Republican candidate, while 19% gave unspecified other reasons for their opposition to the current president. Antipathy toward Biden is particularly strong among Democrats under the age of 45, 82% of whom say they don't want him to try for a second term. The president's numbers aren't much better among older Democrats either, with just 31% of those aged 45 and up saying they want another Biden campaign. At the beginning of this year, the same poll showed Democrats were basically divided on the prospect of the president seeking re-election, with 45% saying they wanted Biden to run again and 51% saying they did not. So there you go, in a nutshell. I got no sense reading the rest of it. So that brings into question, well, who do they want? Okay, well, there's some interest out there in Governor Newsom from California. to run for president because he seems to be more, left-leaning than Biden. Okay, recently he signed a gun law that's modeled after the Texas abortion ban, setting up Supreme Court fight. Okay, which is a pretty clever thing. Let me see if I can't get the details of that here with this goddamn iPad here. California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a controversial gun control bill modeled after Texas's vigilante abortion law on Friday, teeing up a legal battle with the U.S. Supreme Court friendly to Second Amendment groups and firearm owners. Newsom started a game of legal chess in December when he called for gun control legislation in California, modeled after a Texas law that authorizes private citizens to sue anyone who aids and abets in an abortion, which the High Court declined to block. State Senator Bob Hertzberg, Democrat Van Noy, and a coalition of Democratic lawmakers introduced Senate Bill 1327 in response to Newsom's request as a way to test the Supreme Court's legal logic. While setting up a political rivalry with states that have used a conservative majority of justices to expand gun ownership and curb abortion rights. Quote, "If they're going to use this framework to put women's lives at risk, we're going to use it to save people's lives here in the state of California. That's the spirit, the principle behind this law," unquote, Newsom said during a news conference to sign the bill. Newsom on Friday morning also announced that he was running a full-page ad in Texas newspapers targeting Governor Greg Abbott, quote, for refusing to protect human life and take action against gun violence, unquote. Quote, "If Texans can ban abortion and endanger lives, California can ban deadly weapons of war and save lives," unquote, Newsom wrote in a tweet. Earlier this month, Newsom ran another campaign ad in Florida, which claimed that freedom is, quote, unquote, under attack in the Sunshine State and urged residents to, quote, join us in California, unquote. Abbott Press Secretary Renee Eze said Newsom should instead, quote, focus on all the jobs and businesses that are leaving California and coming to Texas, unquote. The new gun law, set to go into effect in January, will allow private people to sue anyone who imports, distributes, manufactures, or sells illegal firearms in California, such as assault weapons, BMG rifles, and so-called ghost guns. The law requires a court to order $10,000 in damages for each weapons used in an alleged violation, along with attorney's fees. The bill was written so that if Texas law is nullified, if Texas's law is nulled, California's would similarly be invalidated. Tongue twisters. Newsom plan SB 1327 at the top of a list of more than a dozen bills he prioritized this year to help address a national crisis of mass shootings and to further limit the gun industry's already restricted influence in California. Newsom signed another measure this month to establish a, quote, firearm industry standard of conduct, unquote, and to allow local governments, the State Department of Justice, and gun violence survivors to sue for violations of state law. Other bills he signed limit firearm advertising to minors, crack down on ghost guns, and require school officials to investigate credible threats of mass casualty incidents on campus. Proponents billed SB 1327 as a way to curtail gun violence by enlisting the legal help of private residents in stopping the spread of prohibited firearms in the Golden State. The Texas statute that inspired California's law allows citizens to sue abortion providers and anyone who helps a person to obtain an abortion after 5 or 6 weeks of pregnancy. Quote, "You've got to do everything possible to reduce gun violence," unquote, Hertzberg said. Quote, "If Texas is going to use this legal framework to essentially outlaw abortion for women, California is going to use the same legislation to save lives," unquote. Lawsuits against many, if not all, of the bills are expected, with several gun ownership groups citing the policies as infringement on Second Amendment rights. quote, "It is obvious that this is a retaliation against lawful gun owners and the court because of the Texas decision," unquote, said Sam Paredes, executive director of Gun Owners of California. Quote, "There is a full expectation that the firearms industry will have a very strong reaction towards the signing of this bill," unquote. Quote, "They are really trying to be nothing but vindictive against lawful people in the firearms industry," unquote. Paredes added, quote, "All of our attorneys are in the process of evaluating what we are going to do on this thing," unquote. When the Supreme Court upheld the Texas law, some Second Amendment advocates voiced fears it could be used against them by gun control advocates, with Eric Jaffe, a lawyer for the Firearms Policy Coalition, calling the decision a vehicle for, quote, "deterring the exercise of any and all rights," unquote. But other legal experts question whether California's strategy to mimic the Texas abortion ban will render the same outcome if it is brought before the Supreme Court's conservative majority. Quote, "One big difference between this law and Texas's abortion ban is the likely opinion of the Supreme Court," unquote, said Adam Winkler, a UCLA law professor with expertise in Second Amendment issues. Winkler pointed to the Supreme Court's recent decisions that struck down abortion rights guaranteed in Roe v. Wade and a New York law that restricted concealed carry as evidence against its likelihood in upholding California's new private right to action. Well, the Supreme Court is much more likely to strike down California's law than the Texas law. We now know one of the reasons the Texas law was not struck down is the court, within a matter of months, would overturn Roe versus Wade, unquote, Winkler said. Quote, "The same court is expanding Second Amendment rights and is now likely to take a ban on assault weapons as unconstitutional," unquote. The American Civil Liberties Union also raised serious concerns with the new law's enforcement tactics. Shlipi Arjawal, a legal director at the ACLU of Northern California, said the group doesn't object to what the bill aims to accomplish in limiting access to illegal firearms. Instead, Arjawal said the ACLU disagrees with circumventing the courts by allowing a private right to action as a way to enforce those restrictions, which could essentially establish a, quote, "constitutional arms race," unquote, with other states. Quote, "The federal constitution creates the floor on our rights that states can't go below. That is what ensures that all citizens, no matter what state they live in, enjoy a baseline level of rights which courts then enforce," unquote, Arjawal said. Texas's abortion ban, quote, "is meant to create a trapdoor in that floor, and now other states are creating their own trapdoors. California is creating one as well. And with all of these trapdoors, the floor becomes meaningless," unquote. A legislative analysis of the bill cautioned that replicating a Texas-style private enforcement strategy, quote, "may be flawed and dangerous," unquote, and noted that California already, quote, "tightly controls, regulates, and criminalizes activities related to restricted firearms," unquote. Hertzberg said the strategy is still worth trying. "We don't like the framework, but if we can take advantage of it and save lives, why is that wrong?" unquote, he asked. Newsom said that California has to assert itself after the Supreme Court, quote, "opened the door," unquote. Quote, "It was a terrible decision, but these are the rules that they have established," unquote. And I agree. Why not try? I mean, essentially what he's doing is he's throwing the Supreme Court's reasoning back in their face, saying, if you're going to strike down this California's ban on illegal weapons, then why can't you use the same reasoning to strike down the ban on abortion? Okay, both these bans are designed to save life. Okay, and yet, you know, they're saying that the Supreme Court most likely won't strike down Texas's abortion ban, but will strike down California's gun ban. Okay. Based on the Second Amendment. Okay, well, people have rights too. Okay, the Second Amendment might be protecting gun rights as far as they know. Okay, but you know, women have a right to their own fucking bodies. It's a it's infringing on their personal, private lives. and people have a right to privacy. So if it's okay to strike down that right, then why not the other? You know what I'm saying? Basically, a good lawyer is going to put the Supreme Court on the defensive here, and challenge them to reason to us why you think banning one thing and not another is okay. Okay, why is it okay to contradict yourself under the same premise? And I think that needs to be thrown up. I mean, that to me is a good retaliation for the bullshit. Okay, they handed us down this month here, or was it last month? I can't remember. Christ, fucking things blend, you know. Recently, that the bullshit reason they handed us down recently about abortion shouldn't, you know, they need to challenge it. They really need to. This is a good retaliation to get them to open up more to us, and let's see their reasoning. Let's see them wiggle themselves out of that corner. Okay, when they see that, you know, people are going to be laughing at them when they try to reason their way out of this contradiction, then that's only going to damage their credibility as Supreme Court justices, and that's only going to make things worse for them when the public gets more outraged over what they did. Okay, at the very least, that's what will happen. Okay, and if they don't strike down the California gun ban, okay, that's going to open the door for a lot of other states possibly to do the same thing, who don't want guns in their population. So either way, the Supreme Court's going to lose here on this, on the merits basis or logic basis. Okay, if they protect it, that's going to lose. They're going to lose on that side, and if they ban it, then, you know, they'll still lose on that. Either way, this was a good torpedo they lodged at the Supreme Court, and it's going to put these Republican fatheads on the bench over there on the defensive to try to explain to the people why they reasoned the way they did on the abortion ban, okay, and why they can't seem to defend, you know, as well on the gun ban. I mean, they had to reach all the way into the friggin' past, like the fucking 16th century or you know, whatever, to pull out a fucking reason why, you know, abortion should be banned in this country. Okay, they had to go so far back that, you know, nobody alive today could even, you know, it was ridiculous. And you have to say, well, if you had to go so far back in order to find a justifiable reason to ban abortion, then we have to take a look at the times of the period that you're reaching at and find out what was going on then that doesn't go on today. Okay, because a lot of things that we were doing back in those days, we learned through the course of evolution were wrong, and we had to make laws to stop it. Okay, now, you know, just because that, you know, people weren't allowed to do abortions back then doesn't mean they were smarter than we were. Okay, a lot of things went on, like slavery and all kinds of nasty little things that were happening back then were going on. And I'll tell you, you know, if people can only look back in time through this narrow lens, okay, and find something they like that happened back then they're not really getting the full picture. You know, it's like pulling a sentence out of a speech and you're taking it out of context. Well, that's what you're kind of doing when you pull out a speech or a decision that was made 200 years ago or something, and using that as a basis for logic for what you're about to do today. Okay, that's taking something out of context, because now you're looking at a different world that was the United States at that time, and all the other things that were going on back then that are unacceptable today. Okay, we would not sit idle by and allow to happen. And these people who still think that abortion should be banned and all that are relics of thinking of a time that's gone. Okay, they're showing us just how old-fashioned they are in their thinking, and why we call them conservative. It's because they don't want to let go of the past that their grandparents, their great-grandparents lived through. They want to keep holding on to those years and drag all the mistakes from the past back into the future, where we have to relive all that shit all over again, okay, and continue the stagnant march forward, okay, where parts of our society evolve and other parts regress, which sets up a divided America. That's not a good plan for the future. Okay, that's just not a good plan for the future. If the whole country cannot move forward, okay, together, then we'll fall together in the end, because you can't have half the country evolving and the other half and then stay where the United States. It doesn't work that way. It's not going to work that way. Eventually, this country will split, literally and figuratively. Okay, and that's where we're headed right now. We're going to have states fighting states now in this country when women try to get abortions, where women will flee to other states to get them, and when they try to go back to their state, they'll be arrested. So then, if they go to another state and stay there, then they're wanted in the state that they're from, which means, now it's like dealing with two countries, okay? One country trying to get people out of another country that are criminals and extradite them back to their country. That's the kind of shit we're going to see. We're going to see more battles in court over this abortion ban than need to be heard. You think the backlog in courts is bad now? Wait till this goes on year after year. Okay, the courts are going to be flooded with this fucking shit. And people are not going to know any peace in this country. We're all going to have to be living like we're living in motorhomes, because if a governor goes from Democrat to Republican, guess what happens? Abortion ban. So everybody pack up your shit and move to another state. Why buy a house in a state where, your state is turning red and blue like a goddamn police car all the time, flashing light? Okay, people are not going to want to stay in one state ever. They're always going to want to be mobile in case of political change in their state. That's what's going to happen. People are just going to be moving from state to state to state to state. Okay, but they can never stay in one spot. The days of growing up in one area all your whole life, that's going to be over and done with here if we don't put a stop to this bullshit, okay, that the Supreme Court just greenlit. I mean, what are we, a box of crayons? Christ. So I think that we're just, we're just setting ourselves up for a country that is going to be in so much upheaval that, other countries who are already shaking their heads at us now are going to say, fuck that, I ain't moving to that country. Those people are so messed up over there, they don't know whether they're to shit or go sailing. It's like, we're going to make it so unappealing to other people that it's going to be us trying to immigrate to other countries instead of the other way around, England's not going to look so bad anymore. Christ. It's amazing how we screwed up a good thing in this country. And leave it to people to do that. How many times have I said that on this show? That humans have a knack of ruining a good thing. And whenever they create something, give it time. It's going to become an albatross. Okay? The phone, the TV, the computer, the internet, all these things that were like grand things that were going to be part of our lives. The future was going to be wonderful. And then we find out what it was doing to society. We never think that we're capable of ruining things, but we always are. And people say, oh, you're so full of gloom and doom, Jeff. No, it's just I have a lot of experience with dealing with people. I've been around this world, okay, and regardless of what country you're from, they are all the same thing. They're all the same thing. Humans are humans, no matter what country you go to. They're all capable of ruining a good thing, okay? And that's why our world was never settled. Okay, that's why we're never going to have an era of peace where people are going to be able to deal with their problems in a civilized fashion. Okay, because everybody has a fat head. They think they're right. They'll go to their grave thinking they're right, and they will fight to the death defending what they think is right. Okay, and God help you if you try to change their mind, because they'll come after you. Okay? Humans are a very stubborn race, stubborn people. Okay? Where we get that from, I don't know, but maybe that's a holdover from primitive times, where everybody wants to be right, have the final word. You know what I'm saying? to feel like they're superior. Okay, Donald Trump certainly is a great holdover from primitive times, okay, because that's exactly the kind of man he is. All right, all of us to some degree share that that quality, which is why we can recognize, you know, a bad apple when we see one. Okay, that's why most of the country knows that Trump is a bad apple. We see some of ourselves in this guy. If we were to just allow ourselves to go unchecked, we'd be doing the same damn things he's doing. But a lot of us have a conscience and we have morals that prevent us from going that way. Trump doesn't, okay? He grew up believing in nothing but money. Okay, let me see. One more thing here, I think. Oh yeah, a judge is wants to acquit Steve Bannon on contempt of Congress charge, and he's considering dismissing the charges against him instead. I don't know what that's going to be all about, but I think that you know, if Bannon gets away with, you know, contempt of Congress charges, that's only going to make Congress look weaker and encourage other people not to obey subpoenas when they're issued to them. Okay, I think it's important Bannon pays some kind of price here for thumbing his nose up at Congress during a criminal investigation. I don't know what you think about that, but that's how I feel about it. Anyway, have a great rest of the week, everybody, and I'm glad you watched the show today. And please keep your ears open on COVID-19 news in your local area, and register to vote. It's coming up soon. And be good to each other, and just keep your eyes open to what's going on. So I'll talk to you later, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.